What's poppin', y'all? Welcome back to another episode of NBA Weekly. I'm your host, Pee Wee the Plug, and in today's episode, I'm going to be responding to hot takes and questions provided by y'all, the people. Now, I do want to say, anytime I put out a tweet asking y'all to send hot takes or questions for me to respond to in the video, it's always like 100 to 200 replies. Now, obviously, I can only respond to like the best 10 to 15. So I'm asking y'all to let me know in the comments if y'all want to make this a regular thing that we do weekly or a couple times a month. A lot of y'all got good questions, valid points, and I think a lot of the stuff y'all put in those replies are good for quality basketball discussion. So y'all let me know in the comments how y'all feel about that. I'll take that information and figure out a way to make this a regular occurrence. But without further ado, let's dive into these questions and hot takes. Let's get it. The first question we have comes from my guy Cameron Till. He says, how well does tanking really work? Is there any hope for small market teams anymore? I will say, with the nature of the world that we live in, most people want to live and work in places like Chicago, Los Angeles, New York. They're big cities, bright light big cities. They have the resources to offer you major high-end money. And that's just the reality that we live in, first and foremost, in any sport. But as far as the NBA, I think we've seen smaller market teams have a bit of success in recent memory. The Bucks not only won a championship, but they put themselves in position to be able to keep Giannis, who's been a dominant talent in this league for a while. And not only did they keep him and win a championship, they've created an organization and a team that looks to be able to compete for championships at a high level for the next 5 years at the least. I also look at a team like the Golden State Warriors. Now, the fine line in your question is tanking. Does tanking work? Some of these teams, I don't know if I can say they tanked, because the idea of tanking is to lose on purpose. The Warriors are in the situation that they are, not because they necessarily lost on purpose, but because they weren't good and they lost a bunch of games. I know a lot of people may look at the Warriors like a, big market team because it's San Francisco, it's on the West Coast, Silicon Valley. But I remember being a kid where nobody was trying to play in San Francisco. They weren't that good. And because of that, they inherited a bunch of draft picks that turned into Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Harrison Barnes. And after drafting all of that talent, they made key moves like Andre Iguodala, bringing in Steve Kerr at the perfect time. And all of that and the combinations of those decisions led to them having a juggernaut team that opened up an opportunity for them to add a Kevin Durant type talent, and the rest is history. But a lot of that comes from them drafting and executing the proper way to build an organization and rebuild it up to a high level. I also look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, who transitioned to the Thunder from being the Seattle Supersonics. This is a team who ultimately didn't win the championship, but they competed for one against the Big Three Miami Heat with a team that was built through drafting. Again, I'm not here to say that the Seattle Supersonics were purposely losing and tanking, but because they weren't a good team, they were able to acquire Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Serge Ibaka. And all of that turned into a championship level team. So we see smaller market teams being able to accumulate talent throughout the draft, but it's about executing and then ultimately being that team that can win the championship. The Utah Jazz, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and then they went out and made moves to add a Mike Conley. They added Bogdanovich and whatnot. They ultimately didn't win a championship, but I think they put themselves in position to be able to compete as a small market team that didn't have to run to free agency and hope that LeBron comes in place for them. So does tanking work? I guess it depends on the team and the method, but I do think if you draft the right way and you make key moves and not rush the process too much and, make big trades as soon as you see any sign of success, I think there's a way for small market teams to compete. Is it going to be often? No. Is it going to be every small market team? Probably not. But I do think there's ways and avenues for small market teams to compete. The next question we have come from Matt. Shout out to my guy Matt. He does my thumbnails here on the channel. He says, do the Wizards have the bleakest future as a team in the league right now, with the front office not wanting to rebuild or trade Brad? I think, yeah, they're in that place where they're just in the middle of the pack constantly. They're not that good, but they're not god awful at the same time. And when you're not god awful, it doesn't put you in a position to get top 3 picks, top 5 picks. If we look at the Wizards' recent history, I think we got Johnny Davis drafted at 10. Corey Kispert was like 15th. Rui Hachimura was like 8th. Denny may have been like a 7th or 8th pick. Those guys are good players, but none of them are franchise cornerstone pieces. And even now, when we look at them in this current year, I don't look at the Wizards as a team that's in the Vic or Scoot Henderson sweepstake. And I think that's a big mistake for them. They have a bunch of players on this roster who we don't look at as long-term Wizard guys. Like I look at Kyle Kuzma. He's in the Wizards. That's just like a pit stop. Same thing with Porzingis. I don't know if I look at Porzingis as a long-term Wizard. Monte Morris, probably not a long-term Wizard. So until they fully commit to a rebuild and just wash their hands with the Bradley Beal situation, you probably won't get equal value. You'll have to get pennies on the dollars, but just pivot away from it, fully commit to a rebuild, and get yourself a top 3 pick that can ultimately give you some sort of chance to have somebody to build around for the future. It'll be a much position than to just get number 10 overall pick, number 8 overall pick, and just stay consistently in the middle of the pack. Next up, we got my guy Dan Excelente. He says if the scoring performances hold steady for the rest of the season and we have 7+ guys averaging over 30 points per game, do you think this is the best year of NBA basketball ever? Dan, no, I don't think so. Me personally, I don't correlate the great and best basketball to points per game or scoring outputs. For me, the best basketball comes from the parity in the NBA. I'm just a fan of when we go into playoffs in the summer, we have no idea who's coming out. I love the way the East looks. It looks like it's going to be a dogfight. I love the way the West looks. It looks like it's going to be a dogfight. You don't know if it's going to be the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, maybe the Clippers even have a chance come playoff time. You know what I mean? Maybe Phoenix, if Devin Booker is healthy, they were one of the top teams when he was healthy. Maybe they shoot up again. I'm seeing people who are believers in the Mavericks. Out east, you got the Celtics, you got the Bucks, you got the Philadelphia 76ers, you got the Cavaliers. The Nets are the hottest team in the league right now. There's just so much different things going on that it's just so unpredictable to who's going to come out of each conference and compete for a championship. To me, that is the best basketball we can get. Guys in today's league are scoring left and right. I mean, we've had almost, 14, 50+ point performances already, and we're not even halfway through the season. So when you have that type of output of scoring, it becomes less impressive. It gets a little bit watered down. I remember growing up when guys had 40 or 50, I would have to force myself to stop what I'm doing to go look at how he got that 40 or 50. Now when it happens, it's not that big of a deal. If I see it, I see it, but I'm not like, oh my gosh, I gotta go see this guy have 40. It's just another night in the NBA. So because of that, it kind of takes the value away. Kind of like a few years ago when we had the triple-double outbreak. It's like when guys are getting triple-doubles, it's like, oh my gosh, he got a triple-double. But then we started to see it like every single night, and this guy had a triple-double, that guy had a triple-double, a center had a triple-double, a point guard had a triple-double, Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double, and it brought the value of triple-doubles down a ton. And I think high-scoring outputs are facing the same type of problem, for me personally at least. My guy Elon Musk says, with the increase in scoring around the league, how long do you think till someone breaks the 100-point scoring record? D. Mitch only had 16 going into the half on his 71-point game. Now, I will say I have been trying to think of and create a TikTok or a YouTube short about 5 players who I think could break the 100-point scoring mark. It's not that I'm predicting they will, but if somebody were to do it, who would be the 5 players? Y'all let me know some names in the comments. I got some names I've been looking at, but I want to see what y'all say as well. I honestly, though, I don't think it would happen anytime soon, just because it's a pride level in the league and a competitive nature where I think if a guy had 80 and going into the 4th, a team would do everything they could to not let him get 20 points to get the 100. You know what I mean? Like, I think even 71, you saw Devin Booker against the Celtics get 70. They were not trying to let him get 70. There is a certain pride and competitive nature in the NBA where it's like a guy can have 70, 71, maybe even 81, but it's like 100. I don't think anybody wants to be known as the team or the players who allowed a guy to get 100 points in the game. We've seen Jalen Rose and how he gets treated for allowing Kobe to get 81. And I don't think anybody really wants that on their name. So I think it won't happen anytime soon. Obviously, there is a possibility just because of the way the game is played, but I'm not anticipating it at all. I just don't believe it'll happen. My guy Reinhard Carson says, in your opinion, what is the most important part to make a defense better as a team? So because you said better as a team, I'm going to go away from personnel or types of players. But I think for a team on the defensive side of the basketball, not to be cliche, but you have to, number one, have communication. That was one of my biggest bones to pick with my Knicks early in this year. We just didn't communicate well. And in today's league where there's so much action going on, there's so much movement, so many guys trying to do this and that for screening, for three-point opportunities, you have to communicate. You have to be able to tell your teammate what's coming and what they should expect. and what direction is coming from. Because if you don't have communication, the offenses in today's league is so sophisticated, you're going to get scored on every time. Teams are having action on the strong side of the floor, and they're also having action on the weak side of the floor. You got guys coming off of pin downs and down screens, and the attention is all on that. And on the weak side of the floor, you got guys setting the back screen for a lob. Everything is important on the court right now in today's league. Everything means something. So at one point, if nobody's paying attention there, or they're not communicating about the weak side or the left side or the strong side, whatever, you're going to give up a lot of points. So I think communication is the number one most prime thing. As small and as simple as it may seem, you have to communicate. And I think having a backline communicator is so important. I think that's why the Warriors have always been good and solid on the defensive side of the basketball, because Draymond Green is such a great communicator. Kevin Garnett was a great communicator. Tyson Chandler was a great communicator. Having that communication from the back end of your defense is so important. So I say communicating, and then from a scheme, I just think that switching. In today's league, where everybody is prone to shoot threes, everybody has the opportunity to take shots. I mean, you look around the league and shots are just flying all over the place. 3-point shots specifically, just let it fly. Andre Drummond is shooting threes. So being able to switch and hold your own on guards, bigger centers, bigger players in the post, just being able to switch and maneuver is also, from a scheme aspect, to me, very important. So I'll go communication and then switching. Those are two prominent things, I think, in having a really good defense as a team. Next up, we got my guy AC No Winter. He says, do you think the Raptors should retool around Siakam or rebuild around Scottie? If Siakam was the same Siakam as a few years ago, then the answer would be clear. But with the steps he keeps taking, it makes the decision a bit murkier. Regardless, though, they're the 12th seed right now. I'm going to say rebuild with Scottie. And the reason I'm going to say rebuild with Scottie is because the way Siakam is playing, you probably can get a lot for him. And with the way OG is playing defensively, you probably can get a lot for him. There's so many teams right now that are trying to compete, and because everything is so tight in both the East and Western Conference, you may be able to get a team that's desperate enough to just give you blindly a wild amount of assets. We saw how the Timberwolves blindly traded for Rudy. We saw how the Cleveland Cavaliers gave up so much to get Donovan, and it looks like it's paying off for them. We saw the DeJounte Hawks and Spurs trade. Like, teams are really trying to make any move they can to give them some type of edge or advantage to be better to compete in the playoffs. So if you can find a proper team that values Siakam that much, or values OG, even maybe getting off Fred and Gary Trent, just piecing this team away player by player and just solely building around Scottie, I think you can have a lot of assets if you trade 3 or 4 of those guys, if not all of them. I think you walk away with an abundance of future picks, an abundance of young players, and you build around Scottie. You keep your draft pick, you have other people's draft pick, and you take that type of approach. But I think if you try to retool, you're probably going to end up running the same problem. I don't think if you keep Siakam and you keep Scottie, I don't think OG gets you anything back that changes the course of that team. Right now, Fred isn't getting you anything back that changes the course of the team, and neither is Gary Trent. You can probably retool and may have a little bit excitement for a little bit because it's new players, and you may can play a different way. You may can find a center, but I think you ultimately run back into another situation where you have to look in the mirror and say, oh, we're probably not that good to really compete with these top-end Eastern Conference teams in the playoffs. We're solid, we're good, but we're not great. And if there is no avenue for you to get great, I think you have to fold your cards and pivot and just rebuild and go into a different direction. And as you have Scottie, a former Rookie of the Year, that's a great starting piece to have. Next, we got my guy John from the Knicks, Jets, etc. podcast. Shout out to my bro. He says, which team do you think the Knicks could take in a best of 7? To be honest with you, when I look at the top teams, I don't think we can beat the Celtics. I honestly don't think we can beat the Bucks. I mean, we can have a chance at the Nets and just hope that they have a hot streak and we can figure some things out there. I think we play the Nets pretty good. But ultimately, Kyrie and Kevin Durant is probably way too much for us to handle. Even the Cavaliers, they just have so much. I would say our best chances are probably against the Cavaliers, or to continue to move up and play against a team like the Pacers. I'm thinking about all of the teams that are above us, though, because there's no way as a 6 seed we're going to play the 7 seed. So maybe the Cavs. Our best chance is probably against a team like the Cavs. But I think really that up top 4 teams, they're so strong that me being a non-biased Knicks fan, and the reality, they probably got us. Our hope is to push them, though. It's to not get swept or get embarrassed and to be able to be challenging and compete and play hard and make them earn the series. But, yeah, we would need a miracle. We would need a miracle. We're not a bad team at all, but we have so many issues as far as closing out games and free throw making. And one night we look like a team that can beat the Nets in a 7-game series. And the next night we look like we might not even make the playoffs. And I think that's a very, very big problem for us. So I'm not sure there's a team out there that is higher than us that we can beat in the series, if I'm being honest. Hearts of Steel 21, he says, are the Nets just on a hot streak, or do you believe they can be a real threat when playoffs come? I think the Nets are going to be a real threat. I think, number one, the coaching change did a lot for them, and defensively, they look a lot better. I think the Kyrie situation that was really, really bad at a point in time, I think is actually a blessing in disguise because it allowed a lot of those role players to find a source of identity and role and confidence in those roles. And I think KD did a very good job while Kyrie was out and Ben was hurt of really uplifting those guys. You know, Yuta Watanabe looks so confident, looks so good. Edmund Sumner looks very good and confident. So I think those type of players, Nicholas Claxton stepping up, Day'Ron Sharpe, getting those guys confident and getting those guys empowered and bought into their role gives the Nets depth. And the healthier Joe Harris and Steph Curry continue to get, and the more of a rhythm they get in with their three-point shooting, hats off. And now Nicholas Claxton is playing the most confident basketball we've seen. Ben Simmons has kind of settled in. Kyrie and Kevin Durant, they're just going out being unstoppable. And you have a bunch of role players bought in and confident. TJ Warner's back. The Nets are real. They're real and they have options. And they are also a team that can make a deadline move to give them more front court size and presence. So I'm going to take the Nets serious. My guy Gabriel Flores says, who is the most underappreciated player in the league? For me, off top, I got to go with a guy like Jeremy Grant, just because I'm not sure if Jeremy Grant will be an all-star, but he's had his all-star moments, and he's a guy that if you look at his career over the last few years, he's just continued to get better and better and better, and he's earned everything. He's played so many different roles. He was a young athletic player with the Trust the Process Philadelphia 76ers. He was a spark off of the OKC bench that turned into one of the best fits that Russell Westbrook had post Kevin Durant. He then went into the Nuggets as a defensive specialist for them, especially in the bubble. He then took on a bigger role in Detroit and was their number one option. Then his second year kind of fizzled out. It wasn't as exciting anymore. And now he's coming to playing with the Damian Lillard and the Blazers, and he's been a very good second, third option for them. Some nights he's the first option. He's done everything. You know, he gives them perimeter shooting. He's slashing. He has length and defending and switchable on defensive end. And like I said, when Dame's been out, he's had 40-point nights. He's hit game winners. He's been a second option in case Dame and Simons are going off. He's been a third option. You know, he's been every single thing they've asked for. He's knocking down a three ball at a high level. He's finishing at a high level. Would love to see him get to the free throw line a little bit more and shoot it better there. But I think Jeremy Grant is giving you everything you can ask for from a non-all-star player. And I think he's going to get paid, hopefully for the Blazers. You know, for them, they re-sign him. But somebody's going to give him a lot of money because he's a steady guy who's always going to improve and buy into his role. And I think that is underappreciated in our league. I think another guy we've seen that from this year is Aaron Gordon with the Nuggets. He's been extremely good for them. A lot of people expected his performance and his play, especially offensively, to drop a lot with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. returning. I think he's just continuing to play above his means. He's another guy that's been valuable defensively and offensively. He fits in perfect there. Again, not a guy that's going to be an all-star, but for a non-all-star player, you're getting a lot of production from him. Bruce Brown has been underappreciated this year. He's a smaller version of those guys. So I like those type of players. Josh Hart has been another, both two Nuggets and two Trailblazers players. But I think those guys are guys that are very, very good glue guys. Probably won't be all-stars and get that appreciation. But all teams that are winning and trying to win at the next level would love to have those type of guys. The Mavericks would love to have one of those guys. The Suns would love to have one of those guys. The Bucks would love to have one of those guys. Philadelphia, all of the top end teams that we look at as future or maybe right now contenders, The Nuggets have 2 of them, but all the other teams would love to have a Jeremy Grant and Josh Hart on their team. Jared Vanderbilt is another name I'm going to throw out there. I love the way Jared Vanderbilt plays. He's just a hard-nosed player, rebounds, steals, defends, does all of the dirty work. Jared Vanderbilt deserves some love. My guy Pingus Tingus, incredible name, says, who are your top 3 draft targets you want the Knicks to get? Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine, guy that has tremendous size, can shoot the ball and score. I think he would fit in perfectly with what the Knicks are looking for. I also look at somebody like Kobe Jones from Xavier, to Cravion Smith from NC State, a 6-man type guy who you just let come off the bench and be a microwave and do whatever he wants to do. There's a lot of different options that we have out there for the Knicks. We just have to hope that we land in a place to get him. Jet Howard out of Michigan, Juwan Howard's son, I think has incredible size and a good shooting stroke who would fit in perfectly with the Knicks too. But yeah, it's just about where we finish in the year and how we use our multiple picks to either move up in the draft or move down. So, we'll see. But I think those are some names to watch for the Knicks. My guy Cam always come with them fire questions. He says, what up, P? Hope you're doing well. My question is, do you think GMs will ever go into drafts with the mindset of everyone isn't a franchise player and start drafting more for fit than boom or bust? I'm going to say yes and no. And I hate to answer a question like that, but I think it all depends on where a team is. So I think normally the first top 10 picks, the top 10, not even lottery, just strictly the top 10, I don't think those teams are ever going to be like, oh, we want fit. I think those teams are always going to look for the boom. Maybe a little bit of both you can the later you get. Maybe the 10th pick is like, this guy has boom potential, but I also can see him having a decent floor and can be a solid player. But I think those top 10 picks, they're normally trying to knock him out of the park and just hit home runs. I think post the 10th pick, you'll see a Phoenix take a Cameron Johnson. Do you think last year they took Ochai Agbaji, an older player, over a one-and-done talent? We'll see that occasionally. Chris Duarte was a late lottery first-round pick that was taken higher than a Trey Murphy or a Trey Mann or Keon Johnson or Jalen Johnson. You'll see that. Ochai Agbaji was taken up before A.J. Griffin to the Hawks. Not saying it's the right pick or it's going to turn out to be the best way to go, but you're starting to see guys and teams take older, better fitting players over the one and done high potential players. Will it ever be in the top 10 or the high end lottery? Doubt it. I doubt we would ever see a Chris Duarte type player going 7th. That's just the way that the league is designed, where the higher you are, the more of a chance you want to take in order to get some type of superstar level player. But I think when you look at the way the Grizzlies have drafted, you look at the way San Antonio has drafted historically, the way that Phoenix has drafted, Washington even getting a Rui Hachimura at 8, Corey Kispert right outside the lottery. Teams are paying attention and they're seeing that there's value in getting older level players who come in and fit. And I think the best example of that is Cameron Johnson going to the Suns. And everybody's like, whoa, they took that guy. Fit perfect, probably one of their most important fitting complementary players that they have on their roster was Cam Johnson taken at 11. So I think teams are starting to pick it up, but I think there's a certain line that they're not going to cross. And I think in the top 10, we won't see a junior who's a good fit be taken. My boy Young Simbi says, why do you think the trade market has been so dry, and who do you think will be the next star level player move? Man, well, I think the trade market has been dry because of the play-in. The play-in makes everybody think they have a chance to compete and play in the playoffs. So nobody really wants to be sellers because they're not sure if they're sellers or buyers. If you look at how tight the conferences are, a 3-game skid can take somebody from being 9th to 5th. So as long as that is like that, nobody's going to want to fully commit to being sellers. And also, I think because of how tight it is, you have teams that are out of it, like the Pistons, and they're going to hold on to Bogdanovich for dear life because they're going to wait for one of these teams to get extremely desperate. The more desperate these teams get, the more they'll be willing to part with to get a Bogdanovich. We just seen a report where the Pistons want a first-round pick and a young player. In reality, I don't think the Pistons really think they're going to get Josh Green and a first-round pick from the Mavericks. I don't think that that's the case. I think they're shooting high so that they can walk away with a first-round pick. We see that a lot. Teams be like, oh, I want a first-round pick, and they end up with 2 seconds. Oh, I want 2 first-round picks, and they get 1. I want a first-round pick and a young player. They really get that young player. It's like I think teams start the bidding high, But in reality, they're expecting to just walk away. You know what I mean? They know what they want, and what they really want is just a step down from what their asking price is. So I think that's the reason. As far as who's the next star level player, that is so tough, because it's like Bradley Beal has a no trade clause, and also who's trying to take on that contract. You look at Pascal Siakam, I think would be a good one. I don't know if you consider OG Anunoby a star yet, so I won't say him. But I'll say Pascal Siakam. I think the writing is on the wall for the Raptors to make some type of pivotal move, and I think they could get a bunch back for him. He would be a hot name. So I would say either Pascal Siakam or DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine. Two situations that aren't looking good, and they would be beneficial to blow it up now rather sooner than later. Shout out to my guy Cyro. I love his YouTube channel. Make sure y'all check my guy out. He says, second year player, you expect a third or fourth year jump. Mine is Santi Aldama. Been covering him since 2019. I love Santi. For me personally, it would have to be somebody like Jalen Johnson. Probably Jalen Johnson with the Atlanta Hawks. I've seen some very good flashes from him in his sophomore year this year. And I think the more opportunity and a bigger role he gets in Atlanta, he can be a very good, productive player for them. He does a lot of similar things that I think John Collins offers, if I'm being honest. And I think they should open up some opportunity for him to play, because when he has gotten minutes, he's been extremely productive with his versatility, his athleticism, and his offensive arsenal that's going to continue to develop with more reps he gets, as far as catch and shoot threes from the corners, lob opportunities, transition plays. He's a guy who can grab and go and push it in transition himself. Underrated playmaking a little bit. And also Keon Johnson from the Trailblazers. I think Keon Johnson in a couple of years could be an energizer guy off of the bench who can defend at a high level, have some exciting plays, and the comfort, the more comfortable and confident that shot looks, which it has a lot over this year, I think the better he'll be. And I think those are two guys that I could see having big third or fourth year jumps. Shout out to everybody that submitted a question or a hot take. I'm sorry I can't answer them all, but like I said in the intro, I think this is something we should explore doing more of. So y'all let me know in the comments how y'all feel about that. Y'all react in the comments with all of my answers to these questions and how y'all feel about them. But much love as always. I am Pee Wee the Plug. This is NBA Weekly. I will see y'all next time. I'm out. Peace.